Yes, I think that the market's trying to figure out exactly how this animal spirits plays out in markets, but I would say we've got a Treasury Secretary that equity markets approve of. We do know that the last Trump presidency cared very much about what stock prices do, and Jeremy Siegel said this is the most stock market focused president ever. And I think that the uncertainty is around trade and the potential risks around tariffs, but we'll have to see. I mean, that's something markets are going to have to deal with it from an uncertainty perspective.
Tom Lee is optimistic about the 2025 investment outlook, citing supportive factors such as a potential pro-business administration, a dovish Federal Reserve, calming interest rates, and $7 trillion in sidelined cash. He believes housing could lead economic recovery as affordability improves and historical trends suggest a favorable market trajectory. He notes that markets are shifting towards cyclical stocks and small caps while navigating uncertainties like trade tensions and tariff risk. Additionally, geopolitical moves like China's probe into Nvidia may impact the tech sector. Overall, Lee sees a strong setup for investors in the coming years.
But if we look at the 2025 environment, it's a great setup because we have a new administration coming in that's maybe pro-animal spirits, a Trump put. We have a dovish Fed, and as you're pointing out, interest rates are kind of calming down after rising. And we know there's still $7 trillion of cash on the sidelines, and I think sentiment's coming back into check. You mentioned that before with the AAII numbers. So I think it's a good setup for investors. I wouldn't be too worried about the next 12 months.
So don't be too worried. I mean, it seems as if there are all these supportive factors, and when you mentioned the 20% up years in a row, history says actually, the following year is up more often than not as well. What do you mean, do you think, specifically by the new administration being pro-animal spirits? First of all, it's true.
Yeah.
You've kind of seen it at work. It seems to pull in that direction, but are there specifics that the market is fixated on that it's going to drive that dynamic?
Let's get more now on Nvidia and the move in semis today with our Seema Modi. Hi, Seema.
Hey, Scott, you touched on trade and geopolitics. With China's investigation into Nvidia's anti-monopoly practices is widely seen by the street as a negotiating tactic. It comes 1 week after the U.S. Commerce Department hit Beijing with new export controls that takes aim at the broader semiconductor industry. The Council on Foreign Relations fellow David Sachs says by launching a probe into the most valuable company in the world, China is signaling that it can inflict pain on the U.S. and if President-elect Trump decides to levy tariffs on China. In terms of market share, China is an important market. It makes up less of Nvidia's total revenues today, which at one point were around 25%, Scott, now closer to around 10 to 12%. That's according to analyst estimates. Shares of Nvidia, along with other chip stocks, are trading lower today on this news, and worth noting, have underperformed the broader tech sector since the U.S. election, Scott.
Thank you. That's Seema Modi.
Melius Research, as Ben writes, has been good to have you. You seem to be excited about a home appliance at Apple as well. At least you wrote it up. It's on a Bloomberg story. It doesn't exist yet. Why did you spend ink on this?
Well, it's only a few paragraphs there, but it is good to see something coming from them. But I do feel like they could have a bigger role in the home. And we wanted to just size the opportunity. It's modest, but it's a nice to have, and it could be bigger than the Vision Pro. So, sorry, Jim. Jim.
I know that's not saying much. More importantly, though, in terms of ChatGPT or at least the AI features that many have been waiting for, and the rollout, how are you seeing that in terms of impacting sales of the actual device?
Yeah, we have iPhone sales accelerating over the next 3 years, frankly. We're pretty excited about the software creating an upgrade cycle. It's going to be gradual. It's going to be rolling. The features today that are coming out this week that people can play with are very good. I mean, the integration of ChatGPT, and by the way, they should get a cut eventually of those who upgrade to the pro versions of OpenAI's new stuff. And I think they will play a role there, but also I think that these visual intelligence features are really good, and it will build. You'll start to hear about it a little bit. It won't be like people standing in line for Christmas, but you'll hear more about it. The emojis, there's something for everybody coming, and then we get more and more Siri, especially in the spring.
So it builds slowly.
It builds slowly. And then
Yeah.
the form factors start to change. We have a low-end phone called the SE coming out in the spring. Then we see a slim version, in our opinion, coming out in the fall. And then we have foldables coming in later years. So we see a multi-year cycle.
Yeah.
And we think the stock's Teflon, by the way. I mean, there's been people trying to will this thing down, and all it does is go up every day. So
it's basically in line with the S&P's performance this year, which not bad.
Not bad.
$3.7 trillion market value right now. Yeah.
Where do you think we are in the arc of Cook's tenure? And are people talking about succession at all, or would-be up-and-comers?
Well, look, they have Jeff. They have a very good, they have a former head of AI from Google. They have a very strong bench. It seems to me he's got energy to stick around at least a few more years. Obviously, I got that question a bit with Luca being the CFO for 10 plus years and now moving on to a new role. Luca did a great job of letting the street kind of see the light on services.
Yes, of course.
He did a great job shepherding us through. Obviously, Tim executed that. I think Tim's got some energy left to see this AI thing through. I think that, there were some folks who doubted him, doubted the company, said, where is it? And then obviously he's shown it. And I think there's a little work left on the table, but they have to be thinking about it a little more at the company, just given that he's, getting into the mid 60s and it's a normal thing you should be doing.
Meanwhile, we got some headlines from Reddit. It's a good example today, incorporating a new AI tool. I think it was DocuSign last week.
Yeah.
Are you starting to feel like the wave of use cases is broadening to things that touch real people's lives?
I do. I think that we are excited about it. We call what could be happening an AI halo effect is not just Nvidia, but now we need to see PCs, smartphones, other things, networking infrastructure, servers, et cetera, start to go. And that will happen when we get more use cases. And obviously, Jim talks a lot about Salesforce, the things they're doing. This agent wave that we're going to see in software is a big deal. And we are seeing more use cases. And OpenAI is going to be a big part of it. And we are seeing 12 days of OpenAI. But wait for this Sora launch that they're doing about their video AI product and many more things. So we're getting more excited. I mean, we don't want to get overhyped. Right now, there's a little bit of seasonality, maybe a pause with Blackwell, and then we should see a big uptick starting next year into 26.
For a breakout.
Courtney. The home builders, I think I'd continue to take a look even with higher rates here. XHB is a way to play it.
Dan.
Guy, we're going to do this. Build your dreams. BYD.
Is that really what it stands for?
Yeah. Largest EV market share in China. They're killing it right there. I think they lower rates. I think this goes higher. Lower rates, BYD higher.
I did not know that it actually stood for anything.
The Perplexity just told me that.
It's interesting to me that, the way the market has behaved in the last several weeks, but even going into the election, was we need to own more cyclicals. We need to own more financial stocks. We're going to reprice this market for maybe a growth acceleration even, or at least maintaining above trend growth. Meanwhile, though, we're only a couple months removed from a pretty big growth scare. Job growth has kind of slowed to a point. The housing market seems pretty locked up. It's kind of interesting how the sentiment has kind of jumped ahead. Is the economic numbers positioned to actually validate that view?
Markets tend to be forward-looking, so I would expect this. I know there has been a recession in durable goods and in housing and auto sales, principally because of high rates, which have made affordability an issue. That's really on the come next year. I mean, I think the spread of 10 years and mortgages should come down, and the 10-year hopefully behaves. And I think if there's more confidence and more supply, I think housing actually could lead this recovery. I mean, I think that's why home builders actually started to act better this week as well.
Yes, they seem very sensitive too to yields, sort of halting their rise as well. I guess the question is, if we believe it's still a supportive environment, then pretty much all the things you can identify would suggest you shouldn't be too worried about next year. The second question is something like the S&P 500 the best vehicle to capitalize on that?
I think investors are still trying to figure this out. We did a survey with our institutional investors and our RIA clients last week. The majority of institutional investors don't think FANG is the leading trade. They're actually betting on cyclicals. But if you look at the RIA world, the majority are betting on FANG. So I think the market is still undecided whether to be long the Mag 7 or the cyclicals. I'm inclined to be more cyclical and bet even on small caps having a very big year next year.
Tom Lee is optimistic about the 2025 investment outlook, citing supportive factors like a pro-business administration, a dovish Federal Reserve, stabilizing rates, and ample sideline cash. He believes housing could drive recovery and sees opportunities in cyclical stocks and small caps despite uncertainties like trade tensions and geopolitical risk. Markets, he suggests, are positioning for long-term growth. He also highlights the growing role of AI in tech, with Nvidia and other sectors adapting to challenges and opportunities. These developments, alongside historical trends, create a promising setup for investors. Do you believe housing will play a significant role in the next economic recovery? How do geopolitical risks like China's probe into Nvidia affect your investment outlook?